So let's keep it going with the Exorcist Deceiver. I ran into this article yesterday, even though it's a few days old, from Bloody Disgusting, and it says 10 directors who should take over the Exorcist Deceiver. So this was published on the 17th, 5 days ago, by Daniel Kurland, um, which is an interesting thought. I mean, I guess they are going to make the movie. It's been taken off the release calendar, and David Gordon Green's gone. But who are directors that might fill in the gap? We've got a vacuum here. So let's see what they came up with. I'm curious. It says, some horror properties naturally lend themselves to incessant sequels, while others seem to will themselves into existence through sheer will, as if they're the result of a demonic possession. William Friedkin's The Exorcist, while over 50 years old, is still considered to be one of the scariest movies of all time. Various Exorcist sequels and even a 2-season television series, which is great, by the way, have materialized over time. However, none of these projects generated the same level of skepticism that accompanied Blumhouse's announcement that they'd be producing not just a legacy sequel to Friedkin's original film, but an entire trilogy directed by David Gordon Green. Green had just pulled off a similar spectacle with his Halloween Legacy sequel trilogy, yet Michael Myers' slasher antics are much more conducive to this formula than repeated turns to The Exorcist's McNeil's. 2023's The Exorcist Believer chronicles two girls who disappear in the woods and return 5 days later with no memory of their absence. They begin to exhibit strange demonic behavior, and the search for answers eventually leads these directors to Ellen Burstyn's Chris McNeil, who is still coming to terms with the tragedies that befell her family 5 decades earlier in the original film. Believer is a mixed bag that reflects some of the biggest and laziest issues with the modern trend of legacy sequels. Many horror fans weren't surprised that when it was announced that Green would no longer be directing Believer's sequel, The Exorcist Deceiver. And just the absolute lack of originality in these titles is breathtaking, which has also been removed from the 2025 release schedule. Believer's poor performance has some hopeful that the rest of this planned trilogy will simply be abandoned. However, NBC Universal spent $400 million on the rights to the Exorcist intellectual property, and so abandoning ship is going to cost them a tremendous amount of money. Interest in the Exorcist Deceiver may currently be tanked, but this is also a promising opportunity for Blumhouse to bring in new talent and salvage what's left of this incomplete trilogy. There are some excellent horror directors, and I know you can see one already at the bottom, who wouldn't just be satisfying replacements for Green, but genuine improvements who have the potential to take The Exorcist to bold, brave places. Now, before we get into this, and you can already see Mike Flanigan there, I'm not sure a really good director or a great director would want to touch this, because, as I've said many times, the natural conclusion of the storyline ended in 1973. You could argue with William Peter Blatty's Exorcist 3 or Legion that, they added a bit more. And they also did a great job with those two seasons, or at least the first season of the FX series, which I own on Blu-ray. But, really, how much more is there to drain out of this? This has become, in my mind, a dead horse. So I don't know that a good director would want to be attached, but this is sort of like a wishing for a unicorn kind of article. So let's just get right into it. Mike Flanigan. There are a lot of accomplished modern horror directors, but few have so consistently knocked it out of the park, both in film and television, as Mike Flanigan. Oculus, Hush, The Haunting of Hill House, Midnight Mass, and The Fall of the House of Usher are all horror masterpieces that have continued to reflect Flanigan's evolving sensibilities and talents as a filmmaker. He's also one of the few directors who crushes it when it comes to Stephen King adaptations, such as Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep. Flanigan is a storyteller who truly thrives when it comes to adaptations in series like The Midnight Club, his The Haunting anthology series, and The Fall of the House of Usher, all expertly remix and reinvents their source material in ways that just don't respect it, but actively improve upon it in some cases. And he is great. I am a huge Mike Flanigan fan. All of the things that they're saying here are correct. And you can find our coverage or my coverage of Mike Flanigan projects on the channel. Flanigan taking on The Exorcist Deceiver seems like he would scour William Peter Blatty's novels for inspiration and even find ways to thread the needle with Blatty's pseudo-sequel, The Ninth Configuration. This makes Flanigan a suitable selection for Deceiver. However, he's also a director who's deeply fascinated with Catholic guilt, grief, and dark spirits who possess the frail and lonely. He's not just a writer who has a strong point of view, but it's one that explicitly aligns with the Exorcist themes and messages, which make him the ideal fit for such a project. Flanigan managed to make a kick-ass sequel to the maligned Ouija, so there's already a strong precedent for his ability to help the Exorcist Deceiver bounce back from believers' diminishing returns. Scott Derrickson. Okay, all right, now I'll think about that. Scott Derrickson is another exciting voice in modern horror who's often at his best when he gets to push limits, just like he does in Sinister and The Black Phone. Derrickson has experience in horror's exorcism subgenre with The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is a unique paranormal story of belief and culpability that's half paranormal spectacle and half courtroom drama. Deliver Us from Evil, while less successful, I like that movie, Deliver Us from Evil, is also another example of Derrickson's unflinching approach to demonic possession that depicts his original approach. Hold on, this thing is jumping all over the place. His original approach to the material. Even Derrickson's debut feature film, Hellraiser Inferno, brings something rewarding to the table, and it rises above its constraints to become the most interesting of the many to direct video Hellraiser sequels. Derrickson is at work on a Black Phone sequel at the moment, but he'd also be a rewarding choice to continue Blumhouse's Exorcist. Derrickson knows how to conjure terrifying visuals, and he could even incorporate a gritty Super 8 quality to the horror that further blurs the line between reality and illusion. Derrickson has already a few stabs at franchise remakes, like with The Day the Earth Stood Still, and there are supposedly plans for an update to Labyrinth. 2. Exorcists wouldn't be a huge leap for Derrickson, especially with exorcism and spiritual material making up much of his existing filmography. It's not a bad choice. Here's one I don't agree with: Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi's Evil Dead trilogy has earned him a permanent place in the Horror Hall of Fame, and even because he just makes comedies. He makes horror comedies, so I don't want him going anywhere near The Exorcist. And even he's left just as big a mark on cinema's superhero genre with his 3 Spider-Man films and a Doctor Strange sequel that sucked. The director's heart will always be in horror. Raimi is not the first name that comes to mind as a director for The Exorcist. That being said, his Evil Dead movies are full of frightening possessions and demonic entities. Not really. And Drag Me to Hell also explores many of the same themes. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness has helped put Raimi back on the map after a lengthy hiatus. Let's see. One of the most interesting things that Raimi could do to take advantage of his current cash would be to hop onto The Exorcist Deceiver as the franchise's new shepherd. I really don't want him going anywhere near it. The Exorcist movies are some of the bleakest horror films that are almost completely lacking in levity. Raimi's speciality is to mix the macabre with slapstick serialism, but he's able to tone down those sensibilities for the right project, although I've never seen any evidence of it off the top of my head. Raimi is another big name who would, if nothing else, create curiosity. Damn it, why is that doing that? Over an Exorcist sequel that most people have already written off. All right, let's just keep moving. I'm going to have to hold the mouse in place. David Brookner. David Brookner has really hit the ground running, and he's responsible for some of the most powerful and contemplative horror films to come out of the past decade, particularly The Ritual, fantastic film, and The Night House. I didn't see The Night House. Bruckner's movies are steeped in trauma while his characters get pushed to the brink, and they don't always return. He's a director who also, I could see this. He's a director who also prioritizes character over cheap scares, which is exactly what the Exorcist Deceiver needs to get right believers' wrongs. The intricate and reality-bending scares of the Night House would also neatly fit into an Exorcist movie's climax. Brookner has certain themes that he continually returns to in his feature films, but he's also proven his versatility through successful entries in anthology fare like Southbound, the VHS franchise, and Shudder's Creepshow series. If Brookner can hit it out of the park with a horror franchise that's as polarizing as Hellraiser, then there's no reason why he couldn't do just as strong work with The Exorcist. These franchises are equally different on their surfaces, but Brookner is all about digging deep and getting raw. Hellraiser and The Exorcist both involve meditations on sin, guilt, pain, and purgatory. Yeah, Hellraiser, I don't know. I mean, it's not the Hellraiser, it's just it devolves into torture porn. So I'm not sure, but the ritual is fucking fantastic. So all right, so maybe that's a thought. Let's keep moving. Tai West. All right, Tai West has put in the work for decades, but is in the middle of a renaissance thanks to his modern horror pistache trilogy, X, Pearl, and the upcoming Maxine. West's filmography continually prove that he's able to deliver pristine period pieces that feel like lost films. The House of the Devil, wow. I only saw that once. It's so fucking bleak. And X tap into 70s and 80s aesthetics while Pearl gleefully indulges in the Technicolor era. These skills are helpful in an Exorcist movie, but West's found footage descent into cult chaos, The Sacrament might be the tonally closest to what Deceiver needs to succeed. The Sacrament culminates in intimate, claustrophobic atmosphere that would perfectly serve the pivotal exorcism sequences in Deceiver. West dips his toe in ghost stories and the paranormal with The Innkeepers. However, he's also directed an episode of the Exorcist TV show's second season and has at least some level of familiarity with the series' tone and atmosphere. West is a horror director who's always pushing himself to grow and someone who unabashedly loves the genre. He'd undoubtedly turn The Exorcist Deceiver into appointment. All right, Justin Benson and Aaron Morehead. Justin Benson and Aaron Morehead, oh geez, why does this keep happening? Have recently joined the Marvel franchise after directing some of Moon Knight's first season. Oh Jesus, it was terrible. And the bulk of Loki's second season. Haven't seen it at all, so I don't like them already, though. I don't like these two already. That being said, it feels like this writing and directing duo's hearts are in horror, and taking over Exorcist Deceiver would be a sublime return to the genre for the surrealist storytellers. Oddly enough, many of the visuals exactly feel out of place during a heightened exorcism. Stop it. That's really annoying. Where reality begins to break in on itself. Venton and Morehead are responsible for trippy sci-fi horror movies like Spring, The Endless, and Something in the Dirt. A running theme through their films is a deep questioning of reality as individuals verge on mental collapse. The two have never told a story quite like The Exorcist before, but their small-scale psychological approach to the genre is exactly what the series needs to get back in touch with its roots. Reading this article, I'm getting the impression it probably would have been better with 5 directors. 5 directors, throw the meat and potatoes out there, and then, maybe even start a campaign to get these people who, would be the absolute best. 10's it starts to get a little thin. I don't want the guy who did Loki doing that. I'm not even going to read the rest of it. Eli Roth, no more torture, pointy, hostile, green, whatever, the Green Inferno, Thanksgiving, Death Wish. I need to rewatch that Death Wish. Eli Roth, no interest in him whatsoever. Kyle Edward Ball, is this a Skinamarink guy? I haven't seen Skinamarink. Has become one of the most interesting horror filmmakers to watch after his 2023 breakout. Skinamarink. I don't know. I don't Kent. Is this the Babadook? Oh, Jesus. Jennifer Kent is a director who doesn't strictly work in horror. However, she has an uncanny flair for the uncomfortable and making your audience sit in position, poisonous tension that beautifully festers over time. The Nightingale is an experience. This energy could do wonders in The Exorcist, Deceiver, and generate a cursed energy that was sorely lacking in Green's Believer. Kent also helmed The Murmuring, one of the best installments of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, which we never got to finish. We got to get around to that, covering that on the show one day. Focuses on conflicted ornithologists who wind up in a cosmically haunting situation that feels like it's ripped out of The Exorcist to Heretics. And the greatest claim to fame is The Babadook, which I only saw once, and I never need to see it again. No interest. John Carpenter. How about no? Just John Carpenter is in most horror fans' Mount Rushmore of directors. He's also an indispensable genre filmmaker with just a fraction of his filmography. But Carpenter dominates the 70s and 80s with exceptional horror movies like Christine, The Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness, and of course, The Thing and Halloween. The problem is that the 80s were 40 years ago. And this guy just doesn't, it was 40 years ago. Let it go. It's extremely unlikely that Carpenter would come out of retirement to direct The Exorcist Deceiver, especially since he didn't return to direct another Halloween entry from Blumhouse's recent trilogy, although he did still work on the score. The 10th guy. So, I mean, who would I like to see do it? I would like to see none of these guys do it. If somebody had to, I guess Brookner would be okay, Scott Derrickson or Mike Flanigan. But to be perfectly honest, if none of these guys came back and did this again, and we just let it go, and just, Hollywood has lost so much money with these. They've just lost so much money recently. If they were just to say, you know what, the hell with it, we're going to write it off, I would be okay with it, because artistically, that's the best possible thing. And every time they put out another one of these shitty sequels, it just becomes more and more diluted. So it's my sincere hope that none of these people touch this again. But if I had to, I guess Scott Derrickson, Mike Flanigan, and I can't even remember who the third person I said was. But yeah, if they come along, that's fine. If not, I hope. Do you think any of these people would be suitable for an Exorcist film? I'm curious as to what you think. Let me know in the comments. Like this video. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Any of these people work? Do you have someone? Do you just want them to leave it alone? Subscribe to the channel. We will be back in the next video. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.